Hi, and welcome to InFocus. This is Jabbar Al-Ubaidi, Mr. Matt Davis.
Hi there.
And he came up with a nice book, nice title. I'm very amazed, how, you as an author came with this. And listen to this audience, to this title, and you're going to see it. At the Home, in the World. So the author, the writer, and he's going to share with us some of his background, because he also he's a teacher, educator, professor. But at home in the world, it's global, it's international. At the same time, it's reflections of a travel addict. Have you heard about that, my friend Matt? Welcome to InFocus.
Thank you very much.
Give us just a little bit of your background and
Sure.
how you came to this business, and please.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised here in Massachusetts, but I left when I went to graduate school. I went to William and Mary in Virginia for a couple of years for my master's, and then went out to California for my PhD. And in 1993 or so, I moved up to the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes.
And got my first and only full-time position. It was beautiful. It really was, and it was a dream. I loved San Francisco. I wanted to live there, and I lived the dream. I actually lived on top of Twin Peaks with a view of the whole city, and got my first teaching position, and my only teaching position, because I stayed there for the next 30 years. It was a small liberal arts school, Dominican University of California, up in Marin County.
Yes.
And one of the benefits of academic life, as you probably know, is we have so much flexibility with our schedules. So summers I could travel, Christmas I could travel. But also I kind of worked my job around travel in a way that when I would have to present at a professional conference, I would look for interesting conferences in interesting parts of the world.
Good for you.
And the university would pay my way to go there, but then I could stay there for a couple of extra weeks on my own dime and explore the place in more detail. I did research for my sabbatical research and decided where could I do research. I study natural disasters and how people respond to disaster. And I thought, Italy has disasters. So I went to Italy for a few months and did research at Mount Vesuvius. And I also led a lot of student study abroad trips to Europe. And so I had all these opportunities
we are a team,
to travel.
Professor. I do the same thing, but don't write a book like
one
this
of the
one.
pluses. Well, I didn't do that until I retired, when I finally had time to write something. So I retired in 2020 and left San Francisco and moved back here. And ironically, I'm living in New Bedford again, but I say I live in a better neighborhood than the one I grew up in now.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy where you live. First of all, I have to say, it's really, I'm so sorry. I read the book, and you mentioned your mom, so I'm so sorry for your loss. But I think now probably she is spiritually with us.
Absolutely.
Really, the title of chapter is really, they are funny, So I capture some of them, because in interest of time. But you said you blame it on your mom. Of course, in a positive way, I know. So could you elaborate on that?
Sure, of course. It's a joke, really, because I was a psychology professor. I wasn't a therapist, but I studied psychology and social psychology. But in psychology, we all know that the typical therapeutic approach is it's all your mother's fault. All your neuroses and psychoses in life it's somehow related to your mother.
Yes.
So I use that as the title for the first chapter. I blame it all on my mother because she was a very free spirit. She loved to travel. She didn't have a lot of money or opportunity to do it, but whenever she did, she would make the most of it. And she instilled that love of exploring and being carefree and not being afraid to do things or try things. She would drive to Boston in a heartbeat, and her friends thought she was crazy. She drove.
Unplanned,
Right. What?
Unplanned.
Yes.
Like, let's go.
Yeah, just spontaneous.
Yes,
Let's go to New Hampshire for an overnight.
It's very interesting when you said, this red-headed kind of little kid sitting in the back, and you were actually looking to the old, the maps and
The good old days when we
all
had
these
maps.
AAA things, and then you say, "Mom, I think we are on the wrong direction. We should have taken left," and she would never answer that or admitted that, but then
She knew.
yeah, tell me.
I would sit in the back seat, and she would bring one of her girlfriends along for the day, and they would be doing their adult talk in the front seat, and I'm in the back looking at my maps, and I would say, "We made a wrong turn back there. You wanted to go on north," and they would just kind of poo-poo me, and we're talking, but I would watch her quietly turn the car around, and I would kind of gloat in the back seat, and she'd say, "Oh, keep quiet back there," good-naturedly. She knew I was right, but her friend Pat actually said, "I couldn't get over it. You were 6 or 7 years old, and you were always right." So early on, I had a really good sense of direction, and I loved reading maps, and geography was my favorite subject, and so that was a real skill at that early age.
I mean, I can tell. But what inspired you to write this book? And again, is At Home is really interesting title. At Home in the World, and this is for our audience, and your reflection on that.
The reason I chose At Home in the World, I actually I created a travel website back in 2016. And I was trying to think of a name for it, and I decided on Matt at Home in the World. And the reason I thought of it is I feel so fortunate to be able to travel to so many places and feel at home. I can go to Manhattan and know a great restaurant to go to. I can land at the Venice airport in Italy and call my friends and say, "Let's meet for lunch," or know where to go. So wherever I go, I kind of feel at home, and it's a wonderful kind of feeling that the world is kind of my backyard and familiar to me. So I decided to call my website At Home in the World. And then when it came time to write the book, I thought, well, I've got to keep that in the title because it's kind of central to the way I look at things.
It makes sense. So now At Home in the World, that's for you true everywhere you go, or you went?
Almost.
Because it's really it's very interesting kind of narrative. Or is it because I have friends in this country or that country, so I feel safe, I feel connected? Or
I think it's
would you elaborate on this?
More of the former. It's a familiarity with places, a comfort with places. If I have friends that live there, like in Italy, I know so many people in Italy, it's wonderful, and I get together with them and have dinners and go to family gatherings. But it's more being familiar with a place and just coming back. One of my problems when I travel is that rather than going to new places, I keep wanting to go back to the places that I love so much, because I have to get back there again. I have to see Venice again. I have to get back to Paris again. And so, again, when I get back there, it's just like, I'm home, and I know where I am, and I'm comfortable. It doesn't feel foreign to me. It feels familiar.
And I'm glad to hear that. So what the most connector? What ties you to these, great countries? Is it the environment? Is it the people? Is it the food? Is it the music? Is what? I mean, I know you're a professor, and you did a lot of research in psychology and social psychology. So where are what's the most kind of factors that tie you to these different countries and societies? And you seem, even with our conversation now, when you say it really with satisfaction. It's genuine.
Right.
It's genuine.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes.
I think if you ask my friends, they would say it's the food.
It's the food.
I'm definitely a foodie, and I love exploring cuisines and the food in so many places. I mean, Italy is my favorite country. And so that one's probably the best example to use about this. But I love the food. I love the people. I mean, not just the friends that I've met, but the people are so warm and so welcoming. And I learned a little bit of Italian early on so that I could communicate better with people. And then I actually studied Italian fairly formally. And so I love the language. I love the way they word things. And then I really got into the music of Italy. And so when I go to Italy, I turn on in my rental car, turn on Radio Italia, which is it's a pop music station, but it's the top 40 Italian songs that are popular right now. And I got familiar with all these wonderful artists, singers, and songwriters that was the kind of music I liked in the 70s here in America. And it's like there's these wonderful vocalists and wonderful songwriters producing great stuff over in Italy. And so I have probably 200 CDs of Italian pop music.
Wow.
And so that's another element to it. When I hear those songs, it kind of brings me back to Italy. And it's the landscapes and the Dolomites in northern Italy and the coastline and the Amalfi Coast and so on. So it's kind of a mix of all those things. And of course it's stronger for some countries than others. In Italy, I've probably spent about 1.5 years of my life in Italy. So it really is kind of home in a way. But even with countries that I haven't visited as often, I just went to Iceland in November for the 3rd time. But it's just, there's a wonderful, I've been here before. I know a great place to have lunch. I know a beach that I want to catch sunset from. So it's that knowledge of the place and feeling.
So Matt, when like you staying in a hotel, right, or sometime with your friends, and I don't know, is it mostly hotels?
Usually it's hotels or
hotels.
Airbnbs, that kind of apartments.
Okay. So when you come back in the evening or night, and then you write down like a journal, what you have done during the day, or how is that going? Was going in that process?
That's interesting. Early on in my travels, when I traveled so much for my university, I would write really long emails to friends back home, friends and family, and I had the good foresight to send them to myself as well.
Copy yourself.
So so when I got home, I had almost an instant travel journal of all that, and then I could clean that up. I put it into a Word document and added details and that kind of thing. And interestingly, my uncle here in Massachusetts one time surprised me on a visit home.
Yeah, you mentioned, actually it's in the book.
Yes, he had a trunk full of all of my emails. He had printed them all out. My aunt had saved every single postcard I'd ever sent from all my travels abroad. And he said, if you don't get this published, I'm going to do it for you, Matthew. And unfortunately, they did not live to see me get this thing published, but it was an inspiration. And so that's where the bulk of the material came from. I started going through those emails, those travel journals, and picking out the stories that I liked the best, the funniest stories, the most poignant stories. I had to select. I've been to 35 countries at this point in my life, so I had to narrow it down to 12 or 13, so maybe there'll be a volume 2 someday.
I think you should. It's 14 chapters,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of constructed the book, and I wanted to make it something cohesive that,
And also interesting, you mentioned that, and you wrote, I'm quoting, I always recommend that when planning a visit to a foreign country, it is important to do some reading and research. Why is that and how?
Well, I always say to people, so many people, you mentioned it in your introduction, so many people are afraid to travel, and especially to a country where they don't speak the language. But I say, you can't learn a language before you're going. I mean, that's impossible. But you can learn a few words, a few important words. One of my favorite examples of that is in Italian, there's a word called piacere, and it means it's a pleasure. And I had learned that, and so I went to a big family gathering in Italy, and my friend introduced me to all the cousins and aunts and uncles at this party, and I just looked out at them and I said, piacere. Yeah. And they all were, oh my God, he knows piacere, that's wonderful. Yeah. And it just made such a great impression. And so that's one way to kind of study, learn a few of the basic words, pleases and thank yous.
Because that's reflection for that you actually intend to know about the culture, about the people.
Yes,
and this is a great advice. And when you say 2 or 3 words there, people, they say, oh wow, you really did your homework. Exactly. And that's when the socialization start to come. And also people, they like to see other people that they think they share with them some values, some cultural components and things like that. And as you mentioned, food is important.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know the language, then try body language, and of course the three things we always say that connect people without the need to know language: sport, music, and food.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's something also stood out to me. You said in the book, if Australia is the land down under, then surely New Zealand should be known as the land even further down under. That was on page 33.
Yes.
First of all, before you answer this question, I really want to go, to New Zealand. I was planning to go last December. Then my friend, my host, something came out.
Right.
Anyway, so I would like to go there. So tell me why you have this wonderful comparative or comparison between the under and the really under.
Well, in a way, I think it upsets the Australians and the New Zealanders when we kind of lump them into the same category, and people don't differentiate between their accents and so on. But on that trip, I mean, Australia is known as the land down under,
Yes, true.
and New Zealand to me seems even more remote. It is further south. It's out there in the middle of the Pacific. I always thought, before I really studied my maps, that Australia and New Zealand were very close together, but New Zealand is 1,500 miles away from Australia, so it's way the heck out there in the Pacific. And so, it's quieter, it's more remote, there are more sheep than people, I think is the cliche that they say, which I really like, and the lamb is really good too. So it has that more remote, outposty kind of feeling to it, and so that just seemed like an appropriate way to describe it as.
So in terms of the people, like in New Zealand, I mean, do you notice something from your observation that you say, okay, this is a standout for me? This is.
I would say in both cases they're very friendly, very warm. The Australians, I would say, are more gregarious. They're really out there and kind of outrageous sometimes. But actually, I did travel with a group of New Zealand grad students once, and they know how to party as well. But I think I would say if I had to make generalizations, I'd say that maybe New Zealanders are a little bit more quiet, conservative. Than the Australians are. But
if you just join us, I'm talking to Matt Davis, is the author of this book, The Home in the World, and Reflections of a Travel Addict. So please read this book. It's really important, and it's fun to read.
But Jordan was like night and day from Egypt. It was the people were very, very kind and polite, and I had an amazing experience there because I met a Bedouin who had a Bedouin camp where he had tourists come on the Saudi border. And so he picked me up at the airport in Amman. They drove me out to Petra, and I spent an overnight there touring the ruins of Petra, which were amazing. And then he came and picked me up and took me down to the Bedouin camp on the Saudi border, out in the middle of the desert. I slept in a tent. We cooked by a campfire outside for dinner. It was quite the really authentic experience of Bedouin life. So it was a wonderful juxtaposition too, from being in a place like Cairo that was so busy and so hectic, and then suddenly being out in the middle of the desert somewhere with Bedouins riding horseback.
So where did you go when you were in Egypt?
In Egypt,
were the most landmarks that you had visited?
We spent a few days in Cairo, and then we flew to Aswan.
Okay.
And then took a boat trip down the Nile again. And it was beautiful.
Now I want to just see what's your recommendation for us as reader of this book and also as the audience for InFocus, that you would say you should do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if we are planning to travel.
Okay. First of all, I would say you have to overcome your fear. I think that holds so many people back. I used to teach a course at my university, the psychology of travel.
Yes.
And a lot of students would take it, and when they finished the course, they would say, now I want to go on a study abroad trip. I was always afraid to do that. But so people are just afraid of stretching and experiencing new and foreign things. So that's the first hurdle, is
Yes.
to try to get over that fear. I think you need to do some planning if you're going to a foreign country. As I said, learn just a little bit about the language, learn about the music or the history or the culture or the food. Make a list of things that you want to see.
Yeah.
But also, I think a big mistake that a lot of travelers make is to plan too much. So it's kind of like, you're
Don't
in
overdo
Rome and you're seeing 27 things and 27 chapels and churches and basilicas on one day, and you burn out. That happened in Egypt to us too. I think we saw 4 or 5 temples. We were gone from 5 in the morning until 10 at night, and it was exhausting. And by the 5th one, I don't care about temples anymore. I don't want to see another one.
Yeah.
So don't overdo it, and try to experience everyday life. I like to go to a local cafe, and hang out and
relax,
strike up conversations with other people, and people watch and kind of watch the customs. And it's wonderful to watch it in Italy in the evening. People go out for their evening strolls and get their gelato, and the kids are playing in the fountain. There's more to life than a museum or some famous site like that. So try to soak up a little bit of the actual everyday life of the place.
I know I alluded to this question, but again, because these are 14 almost places, what are the most favorable locations that you would go back, or you want people, if they are watching this conversation, that, I'm going to try to go to this country or this country or that country?
I make a joke. It's like it's any country that begins with an I. Italy is my favorite place, as I've told you.
Okay, we got that.
Venice is my favorite city in the entire world. There's just no other place like it on the planet.
Okay.
Iceland really got under my skin. It's not for everyone. It's kind of rugged, and it's challenging, and the weather is not beautiful, but it's just a stunning. The scenery is stunning, and the feeling of the land. It's volcanic, and it's really dynamic. I loved Israel, growing up from a Judeo-Christian background.
Yeah.
To be walking on the Sea of Galilee and walking the streets of Jerusalem, just mind-blowing experience.
Well, Mr. Mark Davis, the author of At Home in the World, again, reflections of travel addict. I think you proved that. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and also your thoughts, and hope to see you next time.
It was great talking to you.
And please come back and join us on another episode. This is Jabbar Al-Ubaidi coming to you from Bridgewater, BTV, Massachusetts.